about what drove you to make the films, what inspired you to make the films, why make them and why now, and then maybe we'll come back with a few questions between ourselves and then some questions from the floor. Do you want to start?
Okay, yeah. So my name is Natasha Wall, and I made the short film Terminal that you watched before, Magenta's film. And I suppose I was inspired to make Terminal because in the last, let's say, 4 years, the debate in Ireland about repealing the Eighth Amendment, which is the part in our constitution which takes away the rights of the woman's body as soon as she becomes pregnant in Ireland. It really flared up in 2012 after Savita Halappanavar, who was a woman in Ireland, lost her life as a result of being denied a termination after her baby was miscarrying, and she died of sepsis in a hospital in the west of Ireland. And there was a massive, massive backlash in this, and there was protests, and there was also the government did try and implement an amendment to the amendment, which actually just made it even more complicated. But that's, I suppose, another conversation we'll have in a minute. But essentially after that there was more and more women that came out about their stories, and then you heard stories, and all of these, many of them were just completely faceless, and all of them were tragic. And the more I heard, the more I felt the need for there to be a safe place to talk about abortion in Ireland. It's been stigmatised forever, no matter what side of the fence you're on. And I wanted to tell these stories. I wanted to make a film that kind of tried to put people in the shoes of these women who have to go over to seek safe and legal abortion, to leave their homes and to feel like criminals. And that is why I made it. And to show people that every situation is different, and it can happen to anybody, and to try and sort of give people a sense of why women have to leave and leave their homes. So.
Well, hello, and thank you everybody for being there. I'm always so moved when people actually leave their house to go see my film. In this day and age when, you can get everything on the internet almost, that people actually, leave their home is very touching to me. So I made this film. It took about 7 years for me to make the film. It's my first feature. I studied in film production like 15 years ago. And I never actually worked in that field because I always knew I wanted to make a documentary eventually, but I wanted to have the maturity, I guess, to have a good subject that I really wanted to work on. And so it's only when I turned 30 that I got the inspiration for this film. Because as I say in the beginning of the film, when I turned 30, everyone was like, so, when are you having kids? And I actually had never thought about it. When there's something you don't want to do, you just don't think about it. I don't want to climb Mount Everest, so obviously I've never thought about that. It was the same thing for me and children. So it's only when people started asking me if I wanted some that I realized I didn't. And I started saying that I didn't want children. Not just like, oh, hello, I'm Magenta, I don't want kids. Like, I never did that. It was always when people were like, so do you want any? And I said no. And everyone was so shocked, and I couldn't understand why people were shocked. I mean, I have friends who wanted kids, and I'm like, oh, good for you. And I have friends who don't want kids, and I'm like, good for you. So I really don't understand why people were so shocked. So I decided to see if I could maybe watch films on the subject and try to understand myself, and there weren't any. So this is why I said, okay, you know what, I'm going to make that film. I'm going to make it happen. I wanted to give a voice to women we never hear about. There's never a character like me on any TV show or film. Even in novels, I don't see that. So I thought, there was a real need for this film. And I tried to apply for funding in Canada, where I'm from, and I couldn't get any. way, like, I think it's a little bit the same in the UK. It's government funding for the most part for films. And they were telling me that my subject was too controversial. So I thought, this is why, you should make a film. If it's just, a documentary about, I don't know, chimpanzees, that's a little boring, you want something that is gonna stir a reaction. So I ended up selling my apartment to pay for the film. And this is also why it took 7 years, because I just, I had to work a lot, then I would save up and pay the people who work with me. And so, my favorite joke to say is that this is my baby, actually. This is, you all got introduced to my baby today, and so, again, thank you.
I mean, I think that's really interesting what you were saying about how difficult it was to get funding, and and reflecting what some of the people in the film were saying about how these stories just aren't there. And I think it's something I want to just think about for a couple of minutes, because I think a lot of what we talk about when it comes down to women and their reproductive health and their choices is about sort of silence around certain issues. And it's been so important in Ireland, the telling of stories, and it feels like the death of Halapanava opened the door to people talking about their own personal stories. So there's been a whole range of people coming forward and talking about their own abortion stories. And I just really wanted to talk to you about whether that was something that inspired you, or how that impacts on the campaign out there, and how you feel your storytelling fits into that.
Yeah, I think when there was, I was particularly moved at the time that she died, because I could not believe that I lived in a country where that was allowed to happen. And I saw a documentary then, there was something broadcast on the TV, and they kind of interviewed various women who were making the choice to go over. And there was one woman in particular who definitely inspired me, who had a fatal fetal abnormality, and the lengths that she had gone through to try and procure an abortion, purely, very much like the character actually who you see in the short film, the older woman, is very much inspired by this person's real life story. And some of the lines as well are taken from her story, just because it was very, very powerful. The way she felt about, at the end of it all, there was a funeral to plan, there was no happy outcome, and either way, and she felt as though she needed to kind of put closure onto something, and kind of take hold of, just sort of control the grief in her own way. And I was extremely moved by that, and I was very angered for her that she was not able to sufficiently make that choice in her own home. She had, and I think herself and her mother did campaign to be really. I think they kind of appealed to various organisations and the government to try and get an abortion, but no, she did have to leave. So that one in particular really stuck with me. And then I was kind of just thinking about all these other circumstances then afterwards, and I thought, well, if that's one, well, what about this? Or what if there's a risk to a woman's health, and this, that, and the other? Is it just like Savita? And, that was kind of, and then you heard about other people who just said, this was my circumstance, and this, and this was my circumstance, and all these different other women, and I kind of thought, well, it could be anybody, and it could be, that was the kind of the harshest reality I found, but, and then just when there was this sort of snowball effect of everyone else kind of talking about it, that's kind of really what inspired me as well, that it, you just don't know who it is, and we need to talk about this,
And it's certainly, talking about it has turned it from an abstract political argument, which was quite polarised and quite stuck, I think, into something very different. And
very human. Yeah, very, very human. It's become this worded thing, and this thing we don't talk about. And it's definitely, by putting a face on it, I think people are kind of empathising with it more than they used to, most definitely, yeah.
No, it's such an important issue. I touch upon in my film the subject of abortion as well, and I remember giving an interview to the Canadian press at some point, and the journalist was like, if you were to get pregnant tomorrow, what would you do? And I spontaneously said, well, I would get an abortion because I really don't want to have kids. And she said, do you want me to put that in the article because I can take that out? And I said, no, I'm fine with it. And she said, you might get death threats because you said that. And I'm like, are you kidding me? In 2016, in Canada, where abortion stopped being illegal in the 70s. And I was very fortunate that didn't happen. Nobody tried to, murder me because of that. But yeah, I'm sure that because of your film that you must have also, I don't know, maybe not death threats, I hope not, but I don't know if something like that happened.
Actually, I was kind of very prepared. I was very much prepared for stuff like that because there have been women in kind of the public eye. So there's one comedian in particular, Tara Flynn, who came out about her abortion story, and she's been confronted with, you're a baby killer, you're a murderer, and all this kind of stuff. And there's a journalist as well, Bruce Ingle, who kind of got subjected to the same treatment. And when I set up all the kind of Facebook and Twitter pages and kind of came out about, this is film making and all this kind of thing, I was kind of expecting all that kind of harsh treatment from people and from various organisations in Ireland, but I actually only got the one tweet from some random person who said, Natasha, do you have a view on when life begins? And I didn't respond, but my mum actually said, why don't you just tweet back and say it begins at 40? I didn't bother. I should have.
I think one of the things that came out for me really strongly is the sort of connection between the decision to be child-free, the decision of when and how you have children, and the decision to have an abortion. And what's really problematic about it is that there's a fundamental belief that women don't seem to have the capacity to make moral decisions or practical decisions about their life. And there's this concern that they'll make the wrong decision and they'll regret the decision. So not only will they not be able to make the best decision for themselves because somehow we are all completely incapacitated in the brain department, but also that once we experience a change of heart or a different life circumstance, we won't be able to cope. So if there was a sense of regret, which as one is part of making decisions, it's possible that people will change their minds, and also they'll live with that and manage that. And I think that's something that comes through really strongly from your film, is that actually there's a fundamental distrust in women's capacity.
Yeah. After one of my screenings, this is louder. After one of my screenings, I was talking to someone in the room, and he was saying, basically, anything that a woman does is always the wrong thing. So if you don't want to have kids, you're being wrong. If you only want to have one child and not more, you're wrong. If you decide to have 3 children, that's too much. Like, whatever you do, you're in the wrong. So, I wanted to talk about that in my film. And also, I really like the fact that Lucie Joubert, who is she's the author of that book, and she says that the notion of regret is a social construct. And I thought it was so interesting because I had never thought of that myself. And it's like, it's just because we are told that we will regret our life choices that we end up doing it. So, yeah.
I mean, what you said really resonates. One of the things that I've spent the last nearly 20 years talking to young women about making decisions about pregnancy and trying to look at how you feel about pregnancy, but they're doing it in the context of a situation where actually it's bad enough that we say that all women need to be mothers, but it's even worse when we actually say that, and then we actually say that most women aren't really fit to be mothers. So if you take the sort of Daily Mail narrative, which is our tabloid newspaper, our women-hating flagship, most women are too young or too old. They're stay-at-home mums who are scrounging on the state because they're using benefits, or they're neglectful mums who go out to work and don't look after their children. Trans people who have babies are beyond the pale. Lesbians who want to use fertility treatment are beyond the pale. And as for gay men adopting children, that's also beyond the pale. So on the one hand, we all have to be parents, but on the other hand, there's a very slim section of society who are really fit to be mothers, and I think that's really problematic for us all.
I kind of think it's kind of interesting what you're saying about, the trust that, society doesn't really have trust in women making decisions. I mean, in Ireland, one of the things that is constantly up for debate when we talk about the repeal of the eighth is, this whole phrase of abortion on demand. That's one of the things I think frightens people in Ireland an awful lot, is the idea of that. And I personally feel it's a very insensitive phrase. I think it sort of implies that women are going to be out of control once we kind of repeal this amendment, and that they won't be able to help themselves. But it's, I kind of feel like, well, if you don't trust women with making that decision, then how do you trust them being parents in the first place?
If you'd like me to, I'd like to throw the floor open to questions from the audience. And also, one of the things that you were saying to me earlier is how interesting it is to hear of other people's experiences of how their decisions have been judged and how they've negotiated, talking about their decisions about not having children. What I wanted to do very briefly before we do that is to make a little plug. Some of you may already know about the Abortion Support Network, and they are a charity that helps women from Northern Ireland and from the Republic of Ireland to come over to the UK, and they help with sort of the logistics of travel, they help with financial support and with organising abortions, and they're playing a really crucial role, not just in getting women here who don't have any other source of support, but also in highlighting actually how many women this is impacting and how difficult it is for those women. And they are having a really nice fundraising event tonight, which is a club night called Skirt, at a place called Tipsy, which is just across the road. So come and talk to me afterwards if you want more information, and I'll try and find out more for you. But until then, if I can throw open the floor, if anyone's got any questions or...